Welcome, students, to What is a Logarithm, which is on page 5 of your notes. So what indeed is a logarithm? So a logarithm is probably something you have not used yet in your math class, although you may have used it in maybe chemistry or physics, possibly. So log is short for logarithm, which is pronounced logarithm. So a log is the inverse of an exponential function. So remember, inverse is kind of what is used to cancel. So it's kind of what cancels an exponent of x. So I have some examples here. So kind of like if you look at x plus 2 equals 10 and you think, how am I supposed to cancel the plus 2 to get the x by itself? Well, you would subtract 2, right? So the inverse is subtract 2. Or in this case, how would I cancel this 2 to get that x by itself? Well, 2 times x, I would divide by 2. So the inverse here is divide by 2. Or in this case, I have x squared equals 10. Well, how do I get that x by itself? How do I get rid of that 2? Well, I either use a square root or I use the reciprocal exponent of 1/2. So the inverse would be square root or reciprocal exponent. So just like that. So when we're talking about inverse, that's what we're talking about. It's basically what operation do we use to cancel that thing? Now, these are all ones you know. You know that if you need to cancel addition, you subtract. You know that if you have to cancel multiplication, you divide. And you know that if you need to cancel a square or an exponent of 2, you're going to use a square root or maybe an exponent of 1/2. So here's the challenge. You know all of those. What about this? How do you cancel that 2 to get that x by itself? So you can think about it for a minute. A lot of people try to do this, but look at the difference there. Here the 2 is the exponent and the x is the base. Here the 2 is the base and the x is the exponent. So I'm actually not canceling the same thing there. I have to figure out how to get that x out of the exponent. And what we call this is a logarithm. So the way to get that x by itself, to get it out of the exponent, is called a logarithm. So I'm going to show you how to do it. Most of the time in previous years when students kind of got the hang of it, they didn't think it was that hard. So you just kind of have to get over that initial, oh my God, what is this feeling that you might be having right now? So a logarithm is how you cancel out the base of an exponent, like in the example above, to get that x all by itself. And logarithms are used in scientific fields with very large or very small numbers because they make the numbers easier to work with. And we will see some examples of that later on in the unit. So, how do I convert them? Because we know how to do this. We know how to take addition and make it subtraction. We know how to take a multiplication and make it division and so on. We know all that stuff already. So now think about this, and we're going to do the same type of thing here. So when you write a logarithm, the first thing you want to look at is the base of your exponent. So the base is the b right here. That's the number that gets the power. When you write it as a logarithm, the b becomes a subscript, and it goes kind of like he's stuck to the ground or stuck in the basement or something. So that's called a subscript. You've probably seen them in chemistry, like when you're writing H2O or something like that. That's a subscript right there. So anyway, right, then the exponent, which is what you want to get by itself. Remember, that's your whole goal, is to get that exponent by itself, it's going to end up, sure enough, by itself over here. So it does get that exponent all on its lonesome, which was the entire point of what you were doing. And then finally, the other side of the equation, which, oh, you can kind of see that, ends up right here, which is called the argument. So the name for that thing, which we usually think of as quote unquote the answer, is called the argument once it ends up over here. So let's try a few down here. Let's start with 2 to the power of x equals 10. So first, go ahead and write the word log. Then, so let's look at what happens to the 2. So this is the 2. There's the 2. What happens to that? So when I look over here, it looks like the 2 becomes that subscript. So I'm going to put a little 2 right there. Make sure it looks small so you can tell it's a subscript. And then it looks like the x, that exponent, ends up all by itself. So I'm going to leave some space and put the x all by itself. And that was pink, like that. And then finally, this 10, that would be this y right here, ends up as the argument. So it ends up log base 2 of 10. And that's how you say that, by the way. Log base 2 of 10. That's how you read that. Log base 2 of 10. And now this part right here, this is just a number. A log is a thing that you do. It's not a variable. It's kind of like a plus or a minus. It's something you do to a number. So you're going to tap that in your calculator. Okay, so your log button, find the 10 to the x button, and it's right above it in blue. So you're going to press Control 10 to the x, which should bring up log right there. And notice it's got a little box for your base. So put a 2 right there, and then press the right arrow to get into the parentheses and put your 10. And then just press enter, and you're going to get a decimal approximation for that. So I'm just going to round it to 3 decimal places. So I'm going to get 3.322 equals x. And then I've simplified it all the way. Okay, let's try the next one. So again, start with the word log. And then that 3 is your base, so it's going to become a subscript. And then the x is going to end up all the way over here. And then finally your argument right here. Oops. And then I can go ahead and simplify that. So I'm going to do log base 3 of 243, which is 5. Just like that. So let's do one more. Oh, well, let's start this one. So when it's a log base 10, sometimes you will not see the base written. So log base 10 of 200 equals x. And sometimes they don't write when it's base 10, they don't write the 10. So you're just going to see log 200 equals x, and that means the same thing. So that's only for base 10. So go ahead and see if you can try number 4. And then come back to check your work. All right, so this is how it should have turned out for you. Log base 2 exponent x of 34. So log base 2 of 34. And then when you put this in your calculator, you get approximately 5.087. Now, you've seen E on the first assignment that we did for the unit officially. So e is one of those special numbers, kind of like pi, that it has a decimal that goes forever. So instead of writing a big old number, we just have a letter for it. So e equals approximately 2.718 blah, 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 blah. And e is used a lot when we're doing compound interest, which we'll do later in the unit, and for other exponential growth operations, sometimes in biology and things like that. So we're going to start like usual. We're going to do log base e of 2000 equals x. So log base e of 2000 equals x. Now, log base e has its own special log. Sometimes you'll see it abbreviated with ln, which means natural log. 2000 equals x. So if you see ln, just know it's the same as log base e. It's just its own nickname because it does come up so often in some fields. So let's put it in the calculator and see what it is. So you can put it in both ways and you'll get the same answer. So let's start with log base e. And you can find that, what I hit right there, which you couldn't see, was the pi menu. It's in there and it's also right there. It's up to you which one you want to use. Oops, stay there. E of 2000. And you get 7.6009. So I'm going to round that a little bit to 7.601 because I've been rounding everything to 3 decimal places, so why not? But you can also just do ln of 2000 and you'll get the same result. So ln is right there. It's above the e to the x. So log is above 10 to the x. Ln is above e to the x. So control ln. And then just put 2000. So notice you don't have to type the base in because it's assuming that it's base e because you picked ln. And you get the same result. So either one's good. So now go ahead and see if you can figure out the 2 different ways to write this and then get a decimal for it. And then come back to check. All right, so for number 6, you should have gotten log base e of 25 equals x. And then natural log of 25 equals x. Those are the 2 ways you can write that. And then no matter which way you type it in the calculator, you get the same answer. So you should get 3.21, and we'll round it to 9. So 3.219. So there's your introduction to logs. Now before you go on to the next lesson, make sure you check in with Miss P. Because before you go on, I want to make sure that you understand this, you individually. So please check in with me. You don't need to sit in small group forever. If you can show me you get it, but I do want you to check in. So please don't forget to do that.